Okay, this is Vaush, and he's debating with Blue Orange, a men's rights activist. And if you look down here, I can predict that Blue Orange is going to fail, and you can see why, because they talk about the MRA community, which I wouldn't be talking about. If I was Blue Orange, I'd just be saying there really isn't a community. There's a bunch of activists, and that's it. There's nothing to talk about. Then they talk about definitions of rape culture and toxic masculinity, followed by why do we call it rape culture? See, I wouldn't be caught. He wouldn't catch me talking about that. The only thing I would say is they don't exist. So that's it. False accusations, toxic masculinity again. So this, I can tell you now, this is a failure from Blue Orange perspective.
And I mean, one of the big problems with like this discussion and introing into this discussion is that I think the men's rights community, like the actual group of people online who rep those interests, is terrible. Like really.
And notice that he does that sleight of hands online. People do this all the time. They say, you know, there's this online community that's bad, and then there's the offline people that are better. You know, but do they really think that there's a group of MRAs that are offline that never get online and they have different opinions? I mean, look, Vaush himself deals with online people all the time.
Really terrible. And I think that sets a lot of people against the broader, maybe more defensible prescriptions that the group makes. Like, I mean, I've been around on the whole feminist.
What are the more defensibles? What are the ones that aren't defensible? Notice there's never any details about those. Because if you get into details, they can get debunked. People do this all the time.
Versus MRA discourse on the internet for a while. And I've been around for long enough to know that, like, the MRA communities online are pretty misogynistic for the most.
No, will Blue Orange jump on him? He's all misogynistic. It's just an insult term that says, you know, shut up. I don't like what you have to say. Misogynistic just means you're not referential and deferential to the opposite sex. So it doesn't matter. You know, it's,
most part, it seems like there are a lot of angry guys in there who've got a lot of like very large, very heavy chips in their shoulder. I don't know.
That's very dismissive. Now, Blue Orange, he should be just saying, you know, the Black civil rights activists, they had a big chip on their shoulders, and they were angry when they protested in the streets. People get angry when their rights are taken away, or they're abused, or they're disrespected. So that's how he should be tackling Vaush when he says this. Now we'll see if he does it.
I don't know if that invalidates all their arguments, but I think I understand.
It doesn't invalidate any of their arguments. Being angry doesn't invalidate anything. Vaush, when these women, you know, protest in the street, these feminists, and they get angry, does it invalidate any of their arguments, according to you?
Why, like Sam Cedar and company, might have been a little bit defensive to begin with.
Sam Cedar, in case anyone doesn't know, that Blue Orange got on there and they treated him like dirt and they didn't allow him to talk. So Sam Cedar wasn't defensive. They were dismissive and they stopped him from speaking because they know MRAs do have points.
Say that depends on where you're looking and how you define MRAs. Like a lot of people, they lump in like incel groups and MGTOW groups into the whole manosphere. I wouldn't.
Okay, so he's begging now. Blue Orange is begging. He's saying we're all a bunch of nice guys. Complete failure. You come out swinging, Blue Orange. Do you think Vaush is a nice guy? Come on. He talks to Vaush as if Vaush is a neutral party. Vaush isn't neutral. Blue Orange, did you ever watch this guy? This guy is a selfish, self-centered person. He thinks only of himself. He wants the rights that the MRA fight for. He just wants to deny it to every other guy. This is how men think. This is the true toxic masculinity.
That said, there are definitely some toxic men's rights sites that I do think give us a bad name. I find I have a Discord, and I think we're a very good community. I
have a video on that, and it disproves that. And so that's as far as I need to say about that.
Reddit does a pretty decent subreddit does a pretty decent job of policing itself. And sometimes you do get, these young, angry, confused guys come in and make a misogynistic rant, and the admins will let that post stay. And a lot of
so he uses the word misogynistic as an MRA. Who cares if these guys are angry? If they come in and rant, what I would be suggested is that when they're done with the rant, are they just going to go home? Or are they going to join the fight? That would be my issue as an MRA. Are these young guys just using the MRA site as a tampon? Or someplace to blow off steam and just go home after that?
A lot of people criticize that and say, well, why wouldn't you remove that? And I think it's better when someone comes in with these angry, misguided feelings, instead of just
how are these feelings misguided? Blue Orange, the MRA. If young men are being treated like dirt because they're men, because they were born male, their feelings aren't misguided. In every other case, a man is allowed to blow up. If someone attacks him because of his creed or his religion or his politics, in every other regard. But as soon as his identity is the male sex, all of a sudden he's going to be calm and collective and politely say, I don't agree with you.
Ban that person and send them away to stay there and talk. Because if you just ban them and delete the comment or delete the post, that person is going to go somewhere else and think exactly the same thing. So the Reddit does a pretty good job of engaging conversation and kind of putting people in a more positive mindset. But yeah, certainly there are some more extreme people in the manosphere.
Yeah, because you have to excise a lot.
Extreme in what way? What do they want? What are the details? How are they extreme? And actually, the extremists actually push things to further. The group I'm a part of, if you want to call it a community, which I don't, we actually get more done because the top guy is an extremist. Extremist in this case means he takes a stance. That's all they mean, guys, when they say extremists, by the way. Guys who, they're not like Blue Orange and always trying to meet you halfway. They make a stance and say, no, men are to be treated with respect. And we want true equal rights. That's what they mean when they say extremist.
A lot of people for the community to be defensible, right? Because like the whole red pill, like pickup artist, incel stuff, that all has to be left in the cutting room floor if we're going to talk about.
Well, what can I say? That's why they call them different labels. That's why they call PUA and red pill, and that's MGTOW are not a part of the MRA. They don't claim to be.
But I think like defensible attitudes. I guess.
No, yeah, I don't identify with any of that. And actually, a lot of people kind of have a misunderstanding. The red pill movement doesn't like MRAs.
Yeah, well, I mean,
they think we're simps.
Well, yeah, they think you're like cucks, right? Or that you're like capitulating in a sense. There's a lot of infighting there. I think it's just
But Blue Orange does capitulate a lot. Matter of fact, everything about him, every time I've seen him, it's about capitulation. Begging, saying, please respect us, which has never worked.
Feeling that I always got from men's rights discussion online is that like it was always like this but actually feeling, if you take a look at like a feminist subreddit or feminist community or anything, it's usually like a discussion of feminist issues. But then if
You mean like hashtag kill all men and calling little boys scrotes? That's the plate conversation you're talking about, Vaush. Now, is Blue Orange going to call him on that?
if you look at like a lot of the men's rights subreddits, it feels like a ton of them are like, well, what about us? Or like, well, like men can't do that either. It feel well, there's nothing wrong necessarily
Yeah, that's a good point. They're putting up the double standards to show that they don't have the same rights as women. It's pretty simple, Vaush.
with pointing out double standards. It just feels very adversarial. When I look on feminists,
Yes, it is adversarial. Just like the Jews were adversarial towards the Nazis.
subreddits, I am very rarely reminded of like men's rights advocates because they're usually talking about their own stuff. But when I go on MRA subreddits, it feels like they're always talking about the failings or the double standards of feminism, you know? It almost like it feels like very reactive in that sense. Like
they're comparing it to show that feminism is full of shit, which it is. It's a hate movement. And that's what Blue Orange should be coming out with, swinging. It's a hate movement. It's proven it to be itself to be a hate movement. And its purpose is to attack men constantly. So these guys showing their double standards are showing two things: feminism is bunk, and two, men need their rights.
they want to complain about the existing movement rather than add additional analysis to the discourse.
I have a lot, if you don't mind, in response.
Additional analysis. So when the Jews say, you know, the Nazis are trying to throw us into ovens, what additional analysis do you need? When the black men are drinking out of the black-only fountains, what other additional analysis is necessary? We can't drink out of that whites-only fountain.
That it's kind of a multi-layered answer.
Go for it.
First of all, I always say that I agree with the principle of feminism in theory, on paper, and there are.
Then you're not an MRA, because feminism is a hate movement against you because you were born a guy. So you were a failed MRA. And as usual, Blue Orange, that's why people come and let you talk. One of the guys in the Pro Male Collective, he said he was going to have a debate with Vaush. Vaush ditched him. He ran away from that debate because any guy who's worth his salt will never get a clean shake. He will not get a fair shake. They will not allow him on it. That's why Blue Orange, they allowed you on the Sam Cedar too. Because Blue Orange, if you were great at what you did, that you do as an MRA, that show wouldn't be showed. If you trounced Sam Cedar and made them look like fools, they would just not air it.
Many feminists that I talk to, that I find that when we go issue by issue, we're 95% in agreement. What I find is that MRAs feel that we're attacked, or that the rights of men are attacked by specific, usually more politically natured feminist organizations, you know, lobbyists, political groups.
I can break this down for you. When he says feminist, he means 95% of feminists agree. What he's really saying is women who just call themselves feminist never really thought of the issues. And the reason why they never really thought of the issues is that they have apathy for men. The average woman on the street doesn't care about what the inner life of a man is. So when he talks to them, they kind of agree. So what? None of this matters. It doesn't matter that women give men lip service. It's when the rubber hits the road, when you really want to make equality, and that means women have to have their privileges stripped, that's when you'll see that they'll turn on you.
And specific individuals and figures, not the concept of feminism as a whole. I'll try and simplify what I'm going to say here.
The concept of feminism as a whole is a hate movement. So if Blue Orange agrees with that, he's a feminist. He's not an MRA.
Because I've done a whole video series on that exact question. That is that point, the whole whataboutism, what about the men and reactionary. Well, look, I mean, for example, if you have a law on domestic violence and it's written in a gendered way, or you have like a gap in a social program where men and boys are being excluded, then yeah, we might say, hey, what about the men? Because in a way, feminism has been saying, hey, well, what about the women, such as going to college, such as voting? And I think that's a valid question. I mean, I think pointing out a double standard, like you say, hey, what about X, Y, and Z? Sometimes X, Y, and Z might have a valid case. Well, yeah, kind of, what about us? So, you know, it depends kind of how it's framed.
And I do agree with this. It shouldn't be what about us. It is a we demand it. We demand our rights. That's what it should be. And for Blue Orange to say feminism had any kind of legitimacy means he doesn't either understand the history of feminism or he's feminist. One of those two.
You know, I agree that if you have a post about women talking about their experiences, let's say being catcalled or being sexually assaulted, you know,
why is he bringing up catcalled and sexually assault? As an MRA, I wouldn't give a shit about women being catcalled. I'd be saying this to Vaush. They shouldn't be lumped in together.
On a female-orientated subreddit, then no, it's not appropriate for a man to just jump in there and say, oh, but this happens to men too, because he really wasn't part of the conversation. But if you're going to talk about like national legislation or a bill or a law being...
Yeah, that's why you don't talk to feminists and in their communities. Why would you bother?
Proposed some kind of government program or some kind of welfare program, I think someone has a valid case to point out, well, hey, what about me? I'm a taxpayer, I'm a citizen, I'm a human being. If we feel that we're not getting equal access to this for whatever reason, then we point it out. As for reacting to feminism, I think that's the first thing I said. You know, do we react when we're attacked? Yes. I don't think that's unfair to do. I mean, a lot of feminists will say there shouldn't even be a men's rights movement in the first place because feminism is enough to address men's issues.
When we're being attacked, I think that allows us to, oh my God, what a beggar. Sorry, Blue Orange, what a beggar you are. Vaush, you're a guy. So when they're attacking this guy, they're attacking you.
I agree with that. I'll own up to that position, yeah.
Yeah, it's like this guy didn't give him much ammo, did he? Vaush would have to turn around and say, yeah, I'm against you having rights, but I want me to have those rights.
It's like, you know, if feminists are going to say fair enough to talk about men's rights, okay, what are you doing about unequal pension ages? What are you doing about conscription? What are you doing about circumcision? And then we hear, oh, well, you know, feminism is a women's movement. Fair enough. Then let us have ours.
What do you mean, let us have ours? You just have yours. Why would you beg the women whether you should be allowed to fight for your own rights?
It seems like a lot of this stuff gets roped out into the broader, like, progressive advocacy, because all of the feminists that I know and talk with are in favor of removing conscription for everyone who do fight against, like, circumcision and all that it entails. Usually a lot of the...
Really? I've never heard of them. I've never heard them say that.
Like, really negative stuff that affect men, it's perpetuated by conservatives. The family court disparity, that was originally because people assumed women were naturally better caretakers.
Oh, so he's shifting the blame to conservatives. Yeah, tradcon men are hostile to other men, that's true, and they want to keep them in their gender roles. But so all feminists want men in their gender roles. That's the fact. Vaush, you talk to these feminists, you agree with them, right? How come they haven't told you to stop working for your woman? You have a woman in your life, right? Where is her YouTube channel where she's doing as well as you are? How come, like, don't get me wrong, you're not a hardworking guy who's working at McDonald's. You're taking the easy route by talking in a mic, but this is more successful, and that's why she's there with you now. So how come you, Vaush, are in this typical male gender role where you're working hard and she's living off you?
The idea that men like aren't as good at raising children, likewise. A lot of these imbalances were from a form of sort of benevolent sexism. The idea that women were too weak or stupid to participate in society in the same ways that men could. So a lot of
Well, to tell you the truth, I have this video pointing out that the men who made the contraception pill for women out of the goodness of their own heart, they're not even famous. People don't even know who they are. I had to Google their names. When the women got their contraception pill from these two men, that's when they turned around and burned their bras and said men were oppressing them. You know, women in the political arena, when they get in power, tend to attack men because they don't respect them as people. So I understand perfectly that men looked at women and said, no, we don't want them in the political arena.
these things ended up biasing against men. And I think, like, fundamentally, then, if you solve the problem from the feminist angle, you solve it from the men's angle as well, you know?
This is idiotic, and Vaush knows it. Vaush, when you go into feminist circles and you got the hashtag kill all men, you think they're going to, save men from some, their idea of saving us is putting us on the chopping block. See, Vaush knows all this. So you'd have to be completely ignorant, or he's got to be a liar. So he's got to be a liar. There's no way he doesn't know.
Like, I want to do something. It's not, I'm not saying you have to account for this or that you necessarily agree with it, but I opened up the subreddit, the men's rights subreddit, and there was a post pretty close to the top of the past month. And can I read it out loud? Because this is the attitude that I mean, that gives me some pause, you know?
Let me open it up myself if you don't mind. So
I'll link it to you. Yeah. It's not, so I'm not saying you have to, like, defend this or anything, but, like, this is an attitude that I see really often. So from my perspective, any person fighting for men's rights has to do so from a left-wing perspective. You can't do this from a right-wing perspective. So the post says,
I agree, because the right-wing perspective is the left beats out the right in every way, except for men's rights. Sorry, Vaush, you can't fight for men's rights from a right or a left perspective, because the left wing has embraced feminism. So the left wing has embraced male hostility.
I hate what feminism has done to this country. I hate being called misogynistic because I don't conform to the notion of a rape culture. I hate it when men are always seen as aggressors in encounters between men and women. I hate it when it's assumed that when I'm being nice to a girl, it's just because I want her body. I hate it when women can claim all this crap about male privilege when they have much more actual privileges than men. It goes on for a bit like that. But these attitudes, like, to me, this doesn't feel constructive. And I see.
Wow. So these attitudes of this guy pointing out reality isn't constructive. Exactly how would you fight for your rights if you weren't even allowed to speak about the reality of how society treats you? So basically what people like Vaush, I say that lightly, are advocating for is that men have no ammunition and no shields, that the MRA be toothless. So this guy, he hasn't, that quote that he just read out is not misogynistic. I shouldn't even use that term. It's not angry, really. Well, it's angry, but the thing is, it's not attacking women, is it? It's not calling women names. It's not calling for violence. It's simply a guy who's saying, this is how he experiences his life and the unfairness that he deals with on a constant basis. So if you got rid of those guys, what would be left? Just a bunch of guys who don't even care about their rights.
See this a lot. It feels reactionary. Like it's not a desire, like on the face of things, to promote the interests of men. It's like a distaste.
So how is that any different from these feminists who say this is what men have done to us, they've been oppressed? How is that any different other than who's saying it? Like I said, the civil rights movement, didn't they come out and say, you know, we've been treated bad?
For the effects that feminism have had on society. Because overall, like the influence of feminists have been a net benefit for men, haven't they? A ton of the stuff that we enjoy today has been.
You see, this is why I won't get through this entire video. To hear someone who knows the facts spew this kind of bold-faced lie, it's going to be too painful. You are a liar. I can safely say that, Vaush. You're a grifter. Everyone knows you're a grifter.
With regards to the gender disparity, it's a product of social advances that have been made, particularly in the past half century.
I think I'd have to argue against that somewhat.
I really think I would have to argue against that somewhat. Man, what a beggar you are, BlueOrange.
Depends on the scope you're going back. How far back in history are you going? You talk about what feminists did in the 60s and 70s and the advances they made. That may be true. But if I'm going to be debating politics today, I'm going to be talking about the words and actions of feminist groups today.
All feminism was bad. Suffragettes, the first wave, were handing out white feathers to young men so they'd go off to the war and suffer and die. While the feminists themselves, being women, never had to deal with that. I mean, this is the basic history. So none of these waves were anything but man hatred. And he should be pointing out these second wave in the 60s, what women got was a bunch of privileges that the men didn't have. You know, stripped men of their rights.
And in regards to this Reddit post,
like,
I mean,
just out of curiosity, like, what do feminists do to hurt men? You know?
Okay, I'll just list off some random examples. Do you mind if I cite international examples, or can I just stick to the U.S., or it's up to you?
I'm more comfortable with U.S. stuff, but if you want to use international examples, you can.
Why would he even ask that question? Why is he begging the Vaush, this guy who's obviously just a grifter who really wants his own rights, but just is hostile to every other guy? He's just begging to these feminists to see I'm a good little boy. Why would you ask him any question? Just come out swinging.
I'll start with, this was 2011, I think. This is my state, NOW, National Organization for Women. We're protesting against an alimony reform bill. Now, Florida has something called permanent alimony, where it's possible for someone to get divorced and then be given lifelong alimony payments. So even after they retire, it's taken from their Social Security or their Medicaid for life until the day that they die. And one of the men I did in the opposition, sorry, in the defense of the bill, was a 72-year-old man with dementia.
This was in Florida?
In Florida. I'll dig it up and send it to you, because I know I have it somewhere. I think I've done a video on it too, as a matter of fact. A 72-year-old man with dementia, with Alzheimer's, and he wasn't able to get adequate care because he was still paying alimony to a wife that he divorced decades ago. And the National Organization for Women stepped up and protested against this reform, against this proposed reform, saying, well, this will leave divorced women, you know, without the means to care for themselves. But the bill wasn't against alimony. The bill was just saying, listen, there should be some discretion available, and there should be...
See, now, listen to this. So here, Blue Orange is bringing up a case where basically saying, you know, I don't mind alimony. I just don't like lifetime alimony. I don't mind slavery. I just don't. I just don't like being forever. So, just out of curiosity, Blue Orange, how far would you scale it back to? Like 10 years, 20 years? What if you get just, let's say it's 10 years that you're a slave to some woman because she was nice to you once, and you get hit by a bus 5 years into it, so you die a slave. I don't know what bullshit Vaush is going to come up with. We'll see.
Limits to alimony, and the idea of lifelong alimony for someone with Alzheimer's, really is a pretty terrible thing to impose on someone. And the bill was going to pass, the reform was going to pass, but then now picked up a big storm over it, and it didn't pass. And in fact, permanent alimony is still the law in Florida today. And by the way, I would criticize Trump for similar.
Okay, why is he bringing up Trump? Now he's muddying the waters. You see, this is what you get if you're a moderate MRA. You know, when you whip us, don't whip us too hard. This is why you need a real MRA, an extremist, one who says, no, we want all this slavery gone. Notice Vaush doesn't have much to say. I guess he doesn't want to come right out and say, I don't care about this old man. I hope he suffers in alimony. I hope he gets sick and dies. That's the only thing he could say to pose against what Blue Orange is saying.
Thing. He did an alimony reform law back in 2018 that was horrible for men. So I'll criticize.
Blue Orange derailed himself. I wouldn't have brought up Trump at all. I would have just ended it and said, Vaush, what do you think of that? About the old man suffering like he did. I would have ended it there and said, what do you think of that? And also that the feminists fought against that. They do it all the time. Anyone who says otherwise, who say they back men's rights, is a liar. You are a liar, Vaush, if you suggest such a thing or say it openly in this case.
Someone from the left or the right for what they do.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to see documentation on that to see if there was some like extraneous or like overriding reason why they did that. But is
what a milk toast answer. But in other words, he couldn't answer it. He couldn't make a stand. He couldn't say that was terrible, which it was, because then he would be giving this guy points, right? So he's just, I'd have to look at the overall reasons. It's so obvious what the reasons are. They don't want men not to be paying alimony, to pay free money to women, because they are men and women are women.
it's not the existence of alimony today largely a product of an imbalance in the economic opportunities for men and women? I mean,
No. Actually, women have it easier. They have work quotas. They have job quotas. They get preferential treatment on the job market. And that's what Blue Orange should be saying. He's going to bring up that stupid wage gap that's been debunked thousands of times. He knows it's bullshit. The grifter here knows it's bullshit.
like, because technically, like, you can get alimony if you're a divorced husband, right? It usually just goes to the person who had less economic means to begin with.
If Blue Orange was smart, he'd come out and say the obvious, that a small minority of women have to pay alimony. And if it actually started going the other way, so that it was closer to 50-50, anywhere closer to 50-50, then women would come out and strike it down. The feminists would have to turn around and make a law so that women would never have to pay alimony. They would do that.
It's really only because feminists have been fighting for women's right to work at all that there's even a possibility for alimony.
This is bullshit too. Women have always been able to work, even in the dark ages. They simply prefer that the man do the heavy lifting. Pre-industrial, women wanted a husband, so he would do all the heavy lifting. And he did. In the past, there were never any female lumberjacks or miners. And basically, there's not much of them now.
Money to go towards men. Ideally, if there was no wage gap, then it would be pretty much a par thing, right?
I, in fact, do know women who have been screwed over by alimony and divorce courts.
Okay, so Blue Orange doesn't just come out and say wage gap doesn't exist and destroy the wage gap argument. So he's a failure.
Is mostly happening to men, but it does happen to women too. Absolutely.
Men tend to have more money, right?
Yeah, because men have to work for it, pal. And actually, Blue Orange is going to defeat that. He's going to turn around and point out that women are doing better than what Vaush is trying to paint it.
I would say statistically that's accurate. Younger men today in the United States earn less, less likely to be employed, less likely to go to college, less likely to own a home. A startling fact, young single women are twice as likely to buy their own home as single men.
That's not startling to me, because women have privileges over men in education and the job market. So the feminine that's supposed to help men, Vaush, their work has reaped. It's shown what its effects are. Men are making less money than women.
Oh wait, hold on. Can I add something to a previous thing that I said really quick? I'm reading over it, and it looks like one of the reasons why the National Organization for Women protested against that state bill was because it said that children with divorced parents should spend equal time between the two parents. So
yeah, shared parenting is a good thing. That's good for kids.
I think one of the arguments against it was like, if you had an abusive father and a kind mother, that the kid would be forced to split their time.
I don't think it was forced 50-50. I think it was that the default position would be 50-50, but a judge would still have discretion if you had an abusive parent, for example, to not allow the child to stay with that abusive parent.
True, but it seems like it would give like a legal preference to the idea that equal time should be met.
Yeah, it should be. That's what he just said. You want that to be the standard. You want a fair 50-50. That's right, Vaush. Are you against that? Are you against 50-50 parenting?
Certainly that was controversial in its time. I don't know the specifics of how that be implemented, but I can understand how that would provoke a lot of controversy, you know?
No, I don't see how it would provoke any controversy at all. There is no controversy. It's only controversial to people who are against men having an equal shake, an equal share. It's only controversial to them. So Vaush, how can you be so stupid? How can you be so stupid to take this stance and show everybody what you are so blatantly?
I do think it was that the default position beginning should be the assumption of 50-50, and then you could have aggregating factors. Oh, well, he's abusive, she's abusive, whatever it is. A point MRAs make is that if you give children to the mother by default, what if the mother is abusive? So that's why I think starting with a 50-50 is the better way to go.
It wasn't.
Also, Blue Orange should be pointing out women abuse their children more than men do.
Just starting with it, one of the advocates for the bill, Heather Quick, was saying that the bill called for a 50-50 timeshare split. So it wasn't just like that's the default. It's like there's a legal bias towards the assumption that it should be 50-50.
That's the same thing. That's the same thing. You start off with 50-50. Blue Orange already mentioned that the judge, if the man was an abusive guy, could change his mind. There's nothing to argue against here. Vaush, you're making a fool out of yourself. Again.
And I assume that there'd be different levels of extenuating evidence that you'd provide to lean it one way or another, you know?
I mean, that's
again, I'm not trying to, I'm only saying that I don't like, I don't think this was just like the NOW tackling this bill because they want like women to get alimony forever. You know, there might have been other reasons why they jumped on top of this.
That's bullshit. And he knows it.
I mean, the language when she says calls for, I mean, that's just her wording. That doesn't necessarily mean that she's saying this should be absolutely mandated under every single case. So,
no, but it would be, I assume there'd be like a legal deference towards that as a presumption, right? I mean,
well, yes. Again, there'd be a legal deference to fairness. Man, I'm letting all you guys know. This is 2 hours long. The first 20 minutes of just getting in, I'm just warning you, I'm not going through all this.
I can dig up like the text of the proposed bill, but I don't know how insular we want to get on this. I'm only saying that I think there may have
let's
been.
get past this because this guy is fighting a losing battle here. Let's see, definition of rape culture. I don't know if I'll even touch that. Don't need that. Okay, what do we call it? Okay, we'll start this one. I don't think there's any point in going here.
But the point I'm trying to make broadly, or I guess we're getting kind of in the weeds here, is that like I feel like a lot of the broader prescriptive statements that like feminists make should be the same ones that MRAs would advocate for, right? Like a feminist,
like kill all men. You mean that?
Could say something like, you know, we need to end like rape culture or something, and that would be good. I mean, I feel like that's
now this right here, blue orange, just be saying rape culture doesn't exist.
Something we should all kind of get behind, or like we should reduce toxic masculinity. That'd probably be as good for men as it would be for women, right?
Really? So, oh my God, I'm good. I got to get through this.
On paper, perhaps, but this is where I would start maybe disagreeing with the definitions or the prevalence of rape culture and toxic masculinity.
Which one do you want to hit first?
Let's start with rape culture. And let me start by saying, obviously, my phrase would be, let's stop rape. Let's stop sexual assault. But
that'd be like saying, let's stop murder or let's stop thievery. You can't. So blue orange, you have failed miserably. There are already laws set in against all those crimes, and men are punished when they do them. But women aren't. A woman can rape a man and usually get away with it. So that's what you should be doing. You should be coming out swinging against this bullshit.
I think the way that feminists define rape culture almost makes it worse. And I'll tell you why.
Almost.
The idea of a rape culture, I think, in the US doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you consider that rape is one of the most despised crimes. Sex offenders in prison are the very, very lowest of the low. Even convicts and murderers hate rapists. It is illegal virtually everywhere. It's punished severely virtually everywhere. Now, I do understand there are absolutely problems when it comes to prosecuting rape cases and how it's very difficult to get a prosecution in court. That's
not a problem, though. The only reason it's a problem is that you have to put forth proper evidence to convict a man for a crime. So to be against that blue orange as an MRA, you would have to strip men of their rights. To say men do not deserve, you don't need evidence against men to convict them. That's the only way you'd be able to correct that.
And there are definitely problematic attitudes towards rape that exist. But to say there's a particular and specific rape culture per se.
Yeah, problematic for the men. If a man is raped, people don't care about it. And women rarely get punished.
I'm not totally sure I agree with that. I also don't like the idea of these consent classes in university, and I'll tell you why. Obviously, it's not because consent is important, but the only person that's going to commit rape, in my opinion, or the vast majority of people who are going to commit rape are sociopaths and narcissists and people who don't care about right and wrong. They know what they're doing is wrong because they...
This is not an MRA talking. Because I'd be turning around saying consent classes are there to stop men from engaging in sex, period. Both these guys do. Someone suggested that Vaush might have been a pickup artist at one time in his life. They said, oh, he's too familiar with the terms. I don't know if he ever was. It wouldn't be surprised me if this grifter was one at one time. But the point is, both these guys know that sexual dynamics is nonverbal. You destroy the mood if you start asking for consent. So the consent classes are really to make sure that young men in universities can, two things. One, that they don't get it in the first place because it ruins the mood, because they don't like men, they hate men. And two, that if with these classes, they could turn around, the woman in the university can turn around and call him a rapist just because she feels like it. There's that woman called Mattress Girl that just kept telling lies boldly, and she got to stay in university the whole stint. She was not expelled from the university for being the bold-faced liar she was. So that's the one I'd be tackling and if I was BlueOrange.
They take steps to hide it. So taking a class on consent is mostly worthless because the people that won't do it anyway. The people that will do it are now learning how to better get away with it.
So this is what you're doing right now, I would actually argue, is a kind of rape culture, because the problem. So the assert.
There you go. So him pointing out the obvious is rape culture. In other words, you don't know your place, cotton picker. That's what Vaush is saying. You know, don't point out the obvious reality of it. Just know your place and go to those classes and take your chances. Never get laid or take your chances getting laid. By the way, Vaush doesn't wish any of this for himself. You think he's got a girlfriend, right? Vaush, do you go to your girlfriend and ask permission where if you can touch her or not? I'm going to say no.
Assertion made behind people who argue for the existence of rape culture isn't that like people are pro-rape. It's that people don't understand what rape is, and they will play defense for people who engage in that behavior without knowing.
That's bullshit. People don't know what rape is. Okay. I'm not going to go any further. This whole thing is insulting here. So what's the next one? Why do we call it rape culture? Don't care. I'm telling you guys, you might be disappointed with me, but I am not going to waste. No, my hangout would end up being 3-4 hours long listening to this bullshit, insulting men, false accusations. Let's try here. If it'll start.
It feels like it's always going in circles.
I'll be honest. I mean, even me, false accusations are in the back of my mind. I mean, it does happen. The reason why men are concerned, and I know that, I know you're going to cite the data that it only happens 2% of the time or 8% of the time, and I might cite a study that says false accusations are 40% of accusations. Here's the thing. I would
not believe any study that said that.
I don't believe the 2% either, Vaush, and I'll tell you why. If on the roads, if it was legal for women to speed, women would be driving like maniacs on the streets if there was no punishment for them. And with the hashtag Me Too, there's no punishment for women for false accusations. They don't have to show up in court to make the accusation. They can dogpile a guy with accusations, and there's no punishment when they're caught lying. The guy just dusts himself off and said, "Ooh, I guess it's proven he was a liar." But not even that, because it sticks with them. So at the very least, the false accusations are going to rise astronomically because of hashtag Me Too. And women have proven that they don't have any regard for men. You're with a woman because you're her provider. If you didn't provide for her, she wouldn't be with you, Vaush. That's how women see men. That's how your woman sees you. What makes you think women wouldn't falsely accuse men of things? Why do you think that the Middle East had that rule of two women had to accuse a guy? Because it stopped, it was an effort to stop the false accusations. You know, another woman have to back you up. A woman would have to find another woman willing to lie for her to make the accusation. So ancient cultures understood that.
40%.
Here's the thing. I think it's very difficult or really impossible to get an exact number. Is it 2%? Is it 40%? Is it 10%? Is it 19%?
I think it's about.
It happens.
That's
it happens commonly enough. It happens commonly enough that men are conscious of it and men are concerned.
The sociological.
It's happening all the time. With the hashtag #MeToo.
Evidence I've seen leans in the 2 to 4% range for false rape allegations, but
that would be bullshit, and I would never believe it.
Same amount, more or less, as false allegations of other crimes. False allegations of assault, of murder, of theft. Those are also in about that.
They can't be, because murder and theft, in these cases, the woman would have to get punished. So there's no way they're at the same rates. With the hashtag, there's no punishment. So it's going to be incredibly skewed. This is what BlueOrange should be saying.
That ballpark.
You can't really have a false allegation of murder because you can't fake a dead body.
No, but you can say like it's the.
That's a non sequitur. BlueOrange, that was terrible.
Wrong person who did it, and that is a component of false rape allegations. Too, it's well, maybe I was raped, but like they misidentify who the person who did it was.
That's one of the reasons why I think it's so difficult to nail down an exact percentage of false accusations is, as you said before, a lot of people may not understand consent.
It doesn't matter about the percentage in this case. It's happening enough that guys don't want it's wrong, even if it's 1%. So obviously men have a right to defend themselves from false accusations. There's nothing else to say.
Sense. And you may have someone accused of rape or accusing someone of rape, and they were on 2 different pages of consent. So morally speaking, is someone guilty in that situation?
This is a terrible argument. He's giving into his frame, talking about consent.
Or was someone ignorant in that situation?
Well, if a person's ignorant of consent and then through their ignorance rape somebody, I'd say they're definitely guilty. Yeah. I mean,
this is bullshit. This whole conversation is bullshit. Sorry, I'm not going to put you guys to this. I'll check it later and see if there's anything worthwhile.
Or I'm dedicated to cataloging these incidents, but we're talking about non-legal complaints right now. So what are these? What is this you're seeing every day? People on Reddit going, my bitch ex just told my friend group that I raped her and I didn't. Like, what data are we basing this off of?
Vaush, do you believe in listen and believe? I want to know. That's how I'd tackle this if I was BlueOrange. You're saying these guys confessing what's happened to them in real life, doesn't count. Okay, then isn't that what women say when they talk about men oppressing them and raping rape culture? If you're going to talk about rape, if what you're saying about these guys doesn't count, then women have no reason to talk, do they? Do they? So rape culture doesn't exist. That destroys rape culture. If people just claiming things online or personally doesn't count, then rape culture doesn't exist. BlueOrange, that's what you should be saying. Okay, let's see what we got here. Anyone can be a rapist. No, thank you. Not going to bother. Toxic masculinity. Let's see what they have to say about that.
I mean, I'd have to understand what your definition of toxic masculinity is. But one of the things that feminists say, they say that toxic masculinity is, one of the things they say is that how men aren't free to express themselves, and that social expectations.
These women demand that. Women do not want to see men express themselves. What emotion has Vaush ever expressed in these podcasts of his other than contempt and posturing? Vaush, if you cried in front of your woman, she'd puke in her mouth. So I guarantee to anyone watching this, Vaush would never do that to his woman. Men don't want to show vulnerability to women because women don't want to see it. So women demand this particular behavior.
And gender norms men are such that men are shamed if they express their emotions, or if they come across as being vulnerable, or if they say what they really feel. And
by the way, Blue Orange, who cares? As an MRA, you should be turning around and saying, little boys are being cut. We got to stop this. Men are being falsely accused. We got to stop this. That's what you should be doing. So you're going on this stupid little tangent about toxic masculinity with this grifter.
I'm always like, listen, I say I'm a men's rights activist. That is me expressing myself. Immediately, feminists clamp down on that and say, no, you can't think that, you can't talk that.
And why are you sticking to feminists? Why are you so glued to them? Women in general don't want to see men express themselves.
That way. There was a study, I did a video on this too, I could send it to you as well, that showed 50% of 16 to 24-year-old males in the UK were anti-feminist. And all these feminist blogs and articles came out with these reactions saying, oh my God, this is horrible. We need to teach these young men, 50, half. And all these feminists were coming out saying, oh my God, we have to teach them what feminism is. But what I found...
Yeah, we got to tell these lowlifes their place. That's what they mean by that.
...in the feminist reactions is that none of them were saying, hey, we should listen to why they feel this way. Their first response was to, oh, we have to lecture.
Blue Orange, they're feminist. It's a hate movement. Of course, that's going to be their attitude.
...them on what feminism really is and why they're wrong. Well, when I feel... Sure. Yeah. Maybe you should listen to why they feel this way in the first place. Why do these men feel this way about feminism?
Wow, what a beggar. You're talking about feminist. They hate you, Blue Orange, because you were born a guy. And you're there begging them.
Well, instead of lecturing them as you can say that about any reactionary group. Like, you could poll how many Americans think that, like, gay marriage is wrong. Like, I'm just going to, if I see like 20% of America doesn't like gay marriage, I'm not going to think like, what can I do to reach across to them? I'm probably just going to like shit talk them, Really?
So these guys are against a hate movement and you're trying to compare it with gay marriage? Like, do you see, Blue Orange, how these scumbags are always trying to paint men in a bad light? Men wanting self-respect or wanting respect from society and fair treatment? Like, these guys, they give in to these, they let stuff like this go all the time. Blue Orange are being destroyed in this so-called debate.
I'll make arguments if I'm talking with
I would.
Well, you can reach out if you want, but like, if feminism is a human rights movement, you can't blame people.
Which it isn't. So that defeats that right off the bat.
For being upset that people are opposed to a human rights movement. And earlier.
But they're a hate movement. So that's why they're opposed. That's why you're opposed. You don't want these feminists coming after you, Vaush. Feminists in the UK wanted a 6 p.m. curfew for men. Do you want that for yourself? Do you want to say, sorry, I can't leave the house when I want to? They're feminists. That's what they're aiming for. If I was Blue Orange, I'd bring that up. And I'd say to them, do you want that for your life?
When I said like men, hold on. When I said men should be able to express themselves, I don't mean politically. Men have been expressing themselves politically forever. I mean emotionally.
Well, yes, everyone expresses themselves politically forever. Vaush is trying to paint it like it's a privilege. Really, Vosh, is it a privilege for a man to give his opinion on something? So you're a very privileged person then, because all you do is sit in this chair and give your opinions on things.
Participation in the men's rights movement isn't what I mean when I say that. Like, you should be able to express yourself emotionally, the ability to cry or to be jubilant or to express your feelings with those around you, stuff like that.
You would never do that with your girlfriend, Vosh, because like again, she would puke in her mouth if she saw you sobbing. Come on, dude.
I don't mean like you should be able to voice your opinion politically, because men have done that, you know, in abundance for a very long time. Not exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Again, you're acting like it's a privilege. Well, again, all you do is sit here and give your opinions on your political views. Are you privileged for that? Maybe you should shut up then, Vaush. Why don't you curb your male privilege and shut up?
Lacking in that regard.
Okay, this is as far as I'm going to go. I'll see if there's anything worthwhile listening to this.
Farrah Fawcett or Sarah Fawcett? Farrah Fawcett, right? He's nothing to do with it, but that was a spelling. Another big one was refuge. The word refuge. Those are the two biggest ones. And they basically wanted the language of the bill to be gendered in such a way that teachers and police would be trained to assume, and this is the same as the Duluth model in the US, they'd be trained to assume that a male is inherently a perpetrator and a female is inherently a victim in a domestic violence situation, which I would say completely goes against the idea of being against gender stereotypes and gender roles. If you're against the idea of men...
He's right. In other words, feminists want men in their gender roles. I've said this multiple times in the past.
Being inherently strong and women being inherently weak, then you should be able to recognize that a woman can be physically abusive to a man and a woman can physically harm a man. And thank God their efforts did not work and the abuse bill was passed gender neutral. But that was something that was a major issue, major debate, roughly a year ago today.
Just out of curiosity,
I can
what was the
send you...
How close was the vote on that domestic abuse bill?
You see how Vaush goes about this? He asks some trivial question in order to avoid actually making an answer. So obviously, like, it's obvious what BlueOrange is talking about. Feminists work against the welfare of men because they're a hate movement. And he doesn't say, well, you're right or you're wrong. So he just says nonsense like this. He says, oh, by the way, what color was the shirts they were wearing? Right? So, okay, I'm not going to go any further there. Let's see. I'm just leaving YouTube video here. Let's try MRA's talking points. We'll get in there.
UK now, yes.
Okay, let's take a deep breath. I don't know how much blood we're going to get from this stone.
Having fun?
I love conversations like this. Yeah, it's a really stark reminder on how like head ass so many MRA like talking points are. Because I feel like so many of these issues, when I talk about stuff like this with feminists, I feel like I'm Socrates walking down like the halls of the Athenian, you know, philosophy buildings or whatever. But
really, so when you go to feminist circles and they say hashtag kill all men, is that is that like the Athenian halls?
When I have conversations here, I feel like I don't even know what's happening right now. Feminists.
In other words, this guy actually made some good points, and you don't want to come right out and say you are against the rights of other men. So you're stuck.
Generally speaking,
there's a reason why we have this frustration. Okay. The problem is here,
why are you begging, BlueOrange? Why are you such a disgusting beggar? See, you don't understand me as a man. Vaush is a man. He wants his rights intact. As a human being, he wants his rights intact. So, I mean, this guy's against you because he just wants to gain success himself. And if every other man gets thrown under the bus, that's fine with him. So why are you begging this guy like he's your friend or he's neutral?
Do not have as much information and experience with this particular issue as I do, which is understandable. That's not a criticism.
Good of you to
Okay, but believe me,
remind the audience of that in case they forgot based on our conversation.
Only seen that one link that I sent you. When you look for patterns of behavior, you begin to see certain things that are kind of undeniable, but you have to read between the lines.
What you're describing right now is a form of cognitive bias. You're admitting to conspiracism. What you're engaging in right now is called selective bias. You have trained yourself.
Absolutely not.
You have trained yourself to see some things. So now they are what you look for, and you're more likely to see them than you are to examine counter evidence, which is why multiple times during this conversation, you have cited the popularity of Reddit posts on the MRA forum as evidence that there's a real sociological problem. You've denied the existence of.
It's all very obvious. It's all very obvious. I've been destroying what you had to say from the beginning with basic history. When you go into female forums or feminist forums and they're saying hashtag kill all men and calling little boys scrotes, how do you argue against that? You don't.
The data and then said, well, it must be a problem because people post about it in men's rights.
I disagree with some data.
Okay, this is bullshit. Don't want to go any further here. Civil pushes he wants. Do we agree? Don't care. Here we go. Guys hate women. May as well get to the end of it because guys, this kind of bullshit riles me too much. So I can't stand listening to this dishonest grifter for 2 hours.
Thing is that a lot of guys just fucking hate women. Like, you can take a look at conservative media and a lot of them just fucking hate women, you know? And that's not.
This is a non sequitur. So men should not fight for their rights because he thinks they hate women.
Really a policy position so much as it is like a broader cultural issue. The abortion stuff's also a big deal. Yeah.
I'm pro-choice, just to put that out there.
Hog.
Wow, what a comeback, Blue Orange. What a comeback. More begging. You know, I care about women. I would never let this lowlife here corral me into this bullshit topic. Men hate women.
I'm not sure. I mean, do I think men wake up every day hating women? I'm not sure I'd agree with that.
Well, it's not. They resent. A lot of them.
I'm not sure I would agree with that.
Resent women. A lot of them do. The men's rights people do as well. It's like one of the most common narrative I see from men's rights communities is like that feminists only complain about male privilege, but actually women have more privilege and always have had more privilege, and men have always.
So them saying that, you can argue whether it's true or not, but how's that hatred?
Always worked in disposable, expendable. Male disposability is men died in the fields, and women have just sat on lounge chairs and gotten fanned while people brought them lemonade or whatever. There is a lot of resentment there. I think a lot of guys think.
Well, men did go to war and women didn't. I mean, that's an observable historical fact. Men went underground and suffered in the mines, and women didn't. So, I mean, this is basic understanding. So, are you going to put that in hatred?
I think women have easier lives, which I really don't think
Women do have easier lives, and always have.
they do in most ways. You know, on average.
You know that a lot of famous MRAs, and in fact, my favorite MRA is a woman. Very famous women MRAs, and in
more begging. It doesn't matter if they're feminists, if these women are famous, I should say. In the end, they are just as ineffectual as the male, as the male MRAs, because these women will never, ever, ever fight against female privilege. They're females. They want that privilege. Most of these MRAs he's talking about are traditional conservatives. They're women who want the traditional white housewife leech role. So all they're saying is don't treat our servants too badly, but they want us servants.
The server that I'm in,
Wait, she's not the rational feminist, is she? The Cassie J. Cassie, oh, hold on.
She did the Red Pill documentary, and just so you know, it's not the same Red Pill as you're thinking of. Nothing to do. I kind of don't like that she picked that name. I get.
Okay, not for that. Ideal masculinity. No, I'm not going to go through any more of this horseshit. This whole hangout has been a horseshit. And sorry, guys, I'm not going to go through every second of this nonsense. These guys have been debunked. And we're going to leave it here. Goodbye, everyone.